Max Orland, Melbourne Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
This is Nat Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club.
Trent Cotchin from the Richmond Footy Club.
Scott Pendlebury from the Collingwood Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club.
It's Rory Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows.
This is Tom Mitchell. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Hey, it's MJ from the Coaches Panel. I hope you're well and welcome to a SuperCoach Strategy Roundtable where we here at the Coaches Panel help you navigate your way through the coming weeks of SuperCoach, but specifically of this week to navigate your way through the challenges that round 13 may be throwing at you and some potential ways you can improve your team over the next couple of weeks. It's MJ running solo. We've missed the last couple of SuperCoach strategy roundtables for a bunch of different reasons, which we shared on last week's Q&A podcast episode. But regardless, we couldn't allow the challenges of coordinating the other members of the panel and me not getting us in the way yet again from giving you a podcast. So we've done that. We've got to talk about the cash cows, don't we? There's a bunch of trade downgrade options that in SuperCoach we're looking to. I want to look at that. There's 10 potential trade targets I want to talk you through. And then we want to help some coaches that just feel like, well, not just feel like, they know their season is done from a rankings perspective, giving you some advice about how you can navigate your way through these next couple of weeks and months so that you don't waste, quote unquote, the remainder of your 2024 season. Right out of the gate, just a quick reminder for you, though. We are 1 week down of a 4-week multi-buy split. It means in SuperCoach, you've got available to you an ease of 3 trades every single week. You may, if you've still got some boosts or a single boost left, you could do as many as 4 moves per week if you've got any trade boosts available to you. So potentially a really great moving period for coaches that have got a little bit of flexibility in that space. But we have got 4 teams that are now free from any more buys for the remainder of the season. North Melbourne, Brisbane, the Giants and the Swans. We are going to look at some of those players, but they're really important players for us. I mean, tactically and structurally, there have been some really important players. Zorko, Whitfield, Heaney, Sheasel, and then even if you want to throw in a couple of the cash cows that we've really been dependent on at various times through the season that may still be sitting on your benches or now having to come on field in Revel. Maybe you're still rolling with a Roberts. I don't think there's too many of us that are, but potentially you're still there. McKirch is still a couple of weeks away, but there's a bunch of different ones, let alone then some of the ones we're about to talk about. So a really important bunch of teams. And while we are without Port Adelaide and Fremantle, this should be one of our easier ones, but we are going to lose some really powerful options this week. Jackson's been a really good pick in our starting squads and has shown a really good score and arguably a top 6 scoring forward, let alone his ruck versatility. Sarong's been one of the best mids all year. Ryan's arguably going to continue to be the best defender for the year. Then you've got guys like Young rolling through there. Clark's been really good. Brayshaw has been more than handy, and Jeremy Sharp, one of the best money-making options for us throughout the season. So while it's going to be easier to get 22 scoring prospects on field this week, my encouragement to you is simply this. This is the week, while you can get more players on field, you should be setting yourself up for success for the coming 2 buys. Round 15 is going to be a heck of a lot of pain, specifically through our midfields and arguably even through our forward line as well. So make sure you're looking at that areas of the ground because it could bring some great pain points to us if we're not really careful at all. So just keep that in mind. While this week will feel a slight breath of ease, in contrast, it's not going to be easy if you're looking at the next couple of weeks with any sort of care or attention. Let's talk about the cash cows for a second, because I think we're all honest. We're looking for some downgrade targets now, aren't we? We're looking for some players and prospects that we can top out the cash of players like a Harley Reid, like a Darcy Wilson, a Riley Bonner even. Well, you'd probably hope to get one more week out of them. These are players that have more than done their job for us, and you can move them on. Reid's out suspended, so is an easy trade now. Wilson and Bonner, maybe a little bit more team dependent based on the other moves that you're making. But if you're not moving either of these boys on this week, then you have to roll them for the subsequent following week, given they're going to start to really lose some cash for you. So who are some guys that we could look to bring in? Well, there's 5 trade targets that I think are downgrade options for you to consider. First up is very much dependent on if he is named Thursday night, and that is Leek Aaliyah. He's in at that 190,000 mark. He's got the best break even in the negatives for us, and he's shown, I remember that week against Geelong prior to the bye, he's coming of age. His intercepting is really matured. His lockdown defensive work is really coming along in leaps and bounds. And so while I don't think he is best 22, he has shown when given the opportunity, he is more than capable at AFL level. So I think the Giants have one here. Yet again, they've developed another great defensive unit, and he looks to be long-term a really nice prospect sitting in here. So I do quite like this as an option if named Thursday, because you should start to find, while the defensive line does have some challenges, we still will be missing a bunch of options. Nick Martin in coming weeks, not yet. Nick Dacos in coming weeks, not yet. We should be able to cover the defensive line a little bit more. Players based on ownership potential already have a Sheasel. We'll have Young. We'll have Ryan. We should be able to be okay in the back line, that even if his flaky job security, and it's not flaky because of him, but flaky because he only came in due to covering injuries and absences, and some of them are starting to come back, and he could miss as early as this match, depending on if he gets named Thursday night. To me, I think if he's named, I'd find it really hard to ignore him just because he's going to make me some money. And politely, we've all been carrying some dead weight at D8 for various chunks of the year. So to get that for another spot, whatever, I'm not too fussed by. So to me, Liko I really, really like as a prospect while I have some coffee. Next up, probably one that, again, sits in that flaky job security, but we might just have to go there. Again, not so much for this week, but because of what you're structurally wanting and needing to do and hoping to pick a player that's going to get a couple of more games for you, is Toby McMullen. 123,900 cash cow, does have a negative break even, is a risk vest every single week that there is either green or red on the cards for Toby. But to me, beggars can't be choosers, and politely, there's not a whole ton of great options sitting around, but he's off the bye. He's on the bubble. He's a prospect. So to me, he's one to consider. I don't love it. There's probably one I'm a bit more happy with if I was to advocate for one, but he's a option for you. So if you're looking for a forward downgrade, again, whether it be via Wilson, Reed, you're using some DPP maneuvering. That's the beauty of this year. We've got so much versatility in our team. So for me, he definitely could be one. I really like this call. You've missed a bit of money, but Bruce Revel could still be a prospect. Brisbane is still a few more weeks away from their best lineup coming, and they are missing a bunch of guys for chunks of the season anyway. Will Ashcroft is still at least a month away. And so I'm pretty confident that Bruce, and where he might be one of the best options for us, while not making you the most money, your kind of 80K difference between him and a McMullen, for example, is he should give you security of scoring and availability over these next 3 weeks. And so he'll make you a bit of cash this week. He's shown he's a good scorer. He's got some really good foot skills. And if you believe that the Lions will continue to try to make a late push for finals, then he could be an option. He's a good user of the ball. He does take the game on, a bit of a patchy scorer in SuperCoach. But I think what you're paying up for here with Bruce is you're paying because you believe you're going to get at least 3 on-field performances. If you're not confident that he's got job security for the next 4 weeks, you're not going there at all. Personally, I've got that. And so if you are going, man, I'll spend an extra 80K or not invest an extra 80K on an upgrade because I need the certainty of 18 dots on field at a minimum, then Bruce is perfectly fine as an option. You've missed the boat a little bit, but sometimes it's okay and worthwhile paying up for a little bit more, not just scoring security, availability security. Well, I'm okay with having some dead spots on our team, especially if we're looking for 23rd and 24th premiums and using DPP. We've got a bunch of cheap options that have become available, not just to this point, but still to come over the next couple of weeks. I'm actually not anti you saving the money on an upgrade to get into Bruce. I think he's still a really viable prospect. I know some would be a bit more anti-jumping into Bruce at this point in time, but perfectly honestly, I think you're okay, because what's worse than maybe saving $80,000 is getting a downgrade onto a McMullen type. Not saying he won't play the next 3 weeks, but he's certainly volatile availability over the next 3 weeks for sure. Is what's worse is that 80K doesn't really help you with your upgrade cadence over this month, but it could just shore up an extra 100 points in totality over the next month. That's a little bit more worth the 80 grand. Again, this is where it's team dependent. And I don't know, sometimes in the community that phrase has been used as a cop-out, or it's been used as some kind of slander against other content creators. To me, that feels a little ignorant. Team dependent is actually about helping you, as you're listening or watching this podcast, make informed decisions that are unique to your team. There is no one-stop shop universal answer. Everybody's team makeup is different. Everybody's emphasis to a degree is different. Everybody's coaching strategy or ideology or way of doing things is different. And so, maybe I'm on my high horse here a little bit. That can happen from time to time. But when I hear people being negative or cheeky about team-dependent advice, I think it's either a cheap jab, or it's just misinformed understanding that when coaches, whether it be here at the coaches panel or others, say, look, it's a team dependent, it's not a desire to sit on a fence, but rather it's a desire to not give one-stop shop universal answers. When SuperCoach, life, everything has nuances about it and one-stop shop feedback can sometimes just be a little bit dangerous. Yes, team dependence can be a cop-out, but I'm telling you, for us, it's never that. All right, soapbox off, MJ. Will Dawson, I know a lot of coaches are interested in. And I get why. 117,300, break even of -7, so not great from a cash generation, but the average is okay. But this is why I think coaches are interested in Will Dawson. Number one, we know North Melbourne are just going to continue to learn and develop about that list as much as they possibly can. So they're going to give kids like Will as much opportunity to succeed. So he's going to get opportunities and games. So I think that's one appeal. I think the second is his DPP is really handy for us, especially if you're an owner or about to become an owner of a Zach Fisher, or you're a current owner of an Alex Sexton, because what it does is it opens up squad versatility of how you can move players around. And if you're going to get a D8 or F8 dead spot, you might as well have it off a guy that A, could play some weeks, or B, enables you that versatility of movement, so that as you look to build squad depth into your team, all of a sudden a player like Fisher could be finding himself at any given week at F6 or at D6. It enables movement and versatility along with the premiums you might get. So all of a sudden now a Tom Powell could be over the next month. You might go, no, I'm going to push Tom Powell to be my floating cover in my midfield and forward lines. And ideally, I'm going to start looking to a Fisher type that if I lose a premium in my forward line, okay, I move Powell on, Fisher can go into the back line. I lose a premium in the midfield due to the way the buys work, or an injury or suspension comes, I can move things. And as the year gets on in SuperCoach, trade scarcity becomes a legitimate thing. And so a player like Dawson, I think, is really important. Now, are you trading him to this week if he's not named? Look, probably not. But if he's named on Thursday night, I'm really quite comfortable to get Will, not just because I might need the money that he makes potentially, or the 40 that he gets on field this week. I don't know, there are teams that have Young, Ryan, Clark, Houston, combinations of that, and do have a spot in that defensive line where they could just protect and get an extra 50 odd based on his average in there. So to me, it's not a throwaway spot to get him if he's named on Thursday night. I think his DPP even more than his availability, is the thing that's of most value and worth for coaches. So he's genuinely one. Look, therefore, that could be really, really good. And then there's one that's a big gamble. And it's a huge gamble to do it this week, but I think you could build an argument and a case that outside of Revel, he should is the operative word, get as good an opportunity as any. I'm alluding to the Crows mid-forward Billy Dowling. He hasn't played yet at time of recording. It's not been confirmed whether he's the sub or the not. Maybe you're even watching or listening to this and you already know whether he was the sub, what he scored, and if this advice is either just absolutely bat crazy or whether it's been a stroke of genius luck or just somewhere sitting in the middle of them all. But with no Matt Crouch, the Crows have clearly given him an opportunity, and he'll sit through that midfield mix somewhere. Now, whether or not that means places like a Schonberg or a Shelley, who's been in the media a little bit about hoping and wondering whether he'll pick up some more midfield minutes like he spent a few weeks earlier against West Coast. I think the Crows should give him a shot for a couple of weeks, and I think they will. And with no Matt Crouch for the year, I think he's an opportunity to play. At Sandford level, he's shown that he can win plenty of contested ball. He has no problems finding it. I think the concern is the Crows have not been, for a number of years now, favourable and friendly, with the exception of Michael Laney, to really giving us consistent options of cash cows with role security in the team and positional security to stay at the AFL level. So it's an absolute big stretch to get Billy Dowling, not Dowling, into your team. And it's not going to help you in a fortnight's time where already in our midfield, we are going to be stretched with options and struggling. So if you are going into Billy, maybe you're already a Revel owner, maybe you're already a Dawson owner, and you're like, man, I just need to free up the cash off a Wilson or a Reed, and I'll just take what I can get. Okay, sure. Just the caveat and the factor is just be mindful that in a few weeks' time, you might have a guy that's just not going to be available and playing. It's a potential, and that's more just because the Crows, as much as I'm a Crows fan, should give SuperCoaches no confidence that he's playing consistently vest-free football. But again, the argument to that, he just needs to play round 13, round 14, round 15. He's off the bye anyway. And now all of a sudden, you never see him on field again. The risk with that is coaches that are balancing their moves with getting the Revels, getting the Dawsons, things like that, they can still get him in round 16 as a part of freeing up money for their final upgrade or upgrades, and they already know what they're jumping into and potentially using an M10 spot or an F8 spot and getting that and getting visibility. So that would be the only thing. Personally, if I was to recommend one, if it's on-field scoring you're needing and security they're going to play over the next month, I'd be leaning to Revel. If it's squad versatility and you're not really too worried about the score that you get during the buys from them, then Dawson's probably the one, especially if you're a Sexton owner and you already are or are about to become an owner of Zach Fisher. For me, then Dawson sits in that mix. All right, let's help you with some upgrades, shall we? So we've looked at a couple of the downgrade options that I think are viable prospects. I didn't mention Hutchison, by the way, from the Eagles, purely just because you can get him after the bye. And you don't need to. I don't think there's any urgency that you must get him this.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
This week. Who would the guys I would be targeting this week? As always, it depends on what's your focus in terms of leagues or ranks, determines on where you've got upgrades you need to be making? Are you heavy in any one particular spot? Are you in contention or out of contention? Because it changes a bunch of different things. And what I've done with this is an assumption that there's probably 2, if not 3 players that, based on ownership percentage, coaches already have. The 2 that I'd be leading with is Heaney and Sheasel. Based on ownership percentages, most coaches own them. The damage has certainly been done if you haven't owned them for big chunks of the year. And while you could still be in contention without them, you've required a lot of other variables to go well for you to be able to get there. And so my 10 players I'm suggesting are based on the premise that ownership levels have Heaney and Sheasel so highly across this format that you're probably not looking to them because you already have them. If you don't, okay, well, now you've got to factor them in, but that would be there. The other one is Tom Powell. I don't think people that don't own him are looking to him as a trade-in target. Those that have him, it's probably not going to be worth the trade out. If anything, I'd be encouraging you to look to fade Powell to your bench is probably the more likely prospect. All right, who are the 10 players that I think you could look at as a trade-in target this week? For me, let's go right to the back line is where we're going to start all things off. And let's talk about Nick Haynes. Over his past 3 weeks, he's enjoyed a little bit more freedom, and we're seeing that with that 116 a fortnight ago to 97 before the bye. And he's priced at this 410 marker with a break even at a level that should give us some great cash making. But again, our backlines are so strong at the moment. And so really what you could be looking to with Haynes is something we've talked about a little bit on this podcast, is you're already a Dacos owner. You're already a Houston owner. You're already a Ryan owner. Maybe you've got a Young, a Sicily, a Martin, maybe a Sexton rolling through that, whatever it is. You're like, MJ, I don't really need a defender. No, but what you might need in time is you might actually need some depth in your squad to enable movement and versatility, to have a D7. And at 410,500, he's as good a prospect as we can get. He's got a history of going 90 odd over his last 3 weeks. He's going as good as anyone that you could imagine based on this price range. And I think he's a really good pick. That if you're a little bit cash strapped, maybe because you're making some upgrades elsewhere, or just the way you've been able to balance your squad's money is you're not really got much to move. With very little cash injection, you can make the movement from a topped out rookie or even a dead rookie at D8, whether that be a Reed, Marty Hoare, Blake Howes, if he's not named this week, for example. Caulfield, I know he's still sitting around in a bunch of teams. It's not that hard to be able to, it's a couple $100,000 to get off a dead option into Haynes, and all of a sudden you build squad depth, scoring prospects, and certainly a player that should play through these next couple of weeks with relative confidence. So if you're a little cash strapped in your defensive line and you're looking for a prospect that you could push to your bench as the season goes on, then I'd certainly suggest Nick Haynes as a prospect to you. If we want to stay in that back line, Lachie Whitfield for me is great value. Coming off a 69 means he does have a break even that, while attainable, does mean that if he doesn't hit his higher than average of 99, he is going to leak a little bit more cash. But on his day, he's a 110, 115 scorer, and at under 500,000 to be able to get a guy that over the next 4 or 5 weeks has a relatively decent run and doesn't have any screaming tags rearing at him of multiple weeks anyway. I think you could do much worse if you really wanted to, at spending under 500,000 upgrading to a defender. Now, 100 marker, which is basically what he's sitting at, is probably the base level of what we want for a D6 this year. But for some coaches that moved out of a Martin and a Young, he's not too far away from what they've been doing for us, certainly over the past couple of weeks and months anyway. So if you're looking for a guy that's got prospects of scoring, got legacy and history, and can go on tears and runs. And what I love about Whitfield, a couple of weeks ago, Jaden did a great kind of deep dive for us in SuperCoach around where and how Luke Ryan is scoring. And it's about the quality of ball and the ball use and the placement of where he's getting the ball in defensive 50, and how and why champion data weight that so strongly. And while Ryan and Whitfield are very, very different players in terms of one's a more interceptor, one's a rebounder, there are parallels that we can draw about strong ball use, long kickers of the ball, often rebounding and responsibility of getting the ball out of their team's defensive 50 is there. And so for me, I think if you're on a bit of a budget, again, under 500,000, looking to complete this defensive line a little bit, I think Lockie is genuinely a player that you could look to. So for me, I'm really quite comfortable recommending him. I think he's going to go pretty much what he's averaged at for the rest of the year. His break evens at a space, it's not really dropping in price point, and he's got some good scores banked, not just in a legacy space since Kingsley's taken over, but this year as well. He's been a really decent pick for most of the year. So to me, he's definitely one you can look at. If you want to stay in the back line, the reason I'd be suggesting a Nick Blakey, because he's a little bit more expensive than Whitfield, but politely, he's pretty similar prospect. For me would be as you're looking to create some real unique separation. His ownership, in contrast to some of the other players that I might be suggesting in this list, or that might be in other teams' defensive lines, is purely just you're looking for a guy with ceiling and you're looking for a guy with uniqueness. And that's exactly what Blakey is. 2 of his last 3 are 120 plus scores, and his ownership compared to some of the other guys that have got an average of 100 plus in SuperCoach is crazy unique in comparison to them. So it's probably not the best option, but if you go, MJ, I just want unique in my back line. I want ceiling, and 120 is what I'm defining as ceiling in my back line any given week, then absolutely Blakey's there. And then also, if you just want a guy that's fun to watch, he's well and truly, in my eyes, marching towards All-Australian selection this year. I'm not too sure there's been many better this year in the role that he is asked to play for the Swans. He's been excellent. And so, again, looking for ceiling, looking for unique, this might be your guy in the back line. Let's move out of the back line. Despite him playing in the defensive line, he is available to us as a mid forward. It's the forward that for a lot of super coaches has got away and now priced over 600,000. He's going at 110 for the year. And while he's coming off the back of a 66 and is available and attainable in a week's time, if you like, sometimes when you can afford the best in a line or one of the best in a line, you don't fart around with it, especially if you're in contention, either for winning SuperCoach or winning your league. And this is the guy that in the forward lines that is taking ground against you every single week. Yeah, he's expensive, but also let's think about it. We've had some amazing value prospects this year that we either still have, that we're about to get, or are getting this week. Like Zach Fisher's crazy value based on what he's done over the last couple of weeks. Clayton Oliver, while not living up to his potential of what we'd hope, the guy that's got a history of a safe 110 guy is 120 guy is been so cheap. Connor Rosie in a couple of weeks is so cheap for us. We've started with an Elliot Yeo who up until injury was, I think he's going like 110, 113. While he's out of most of our sides, the scoring he gave us, the money he made for us is incredible. Young, Martin, let alone an Isaac Heaney, who is great value, Grundy, Cherry. Like we have been blessed with incredible value this year. So I think sometimes when you can afford to get one of, if not the best prospect in a line, you just need to go there. Now, while I know he is old, injury risk, I think you've just got to take the plunge on this, because if he gets injured, okay, it's a trade. For what it's worth, who's the best forwards from now to the end of the year in SuperCoach? Like, honestly, there's 3 clear standouts to me. And there's some really good SuperCoach options. Jackson's been good. Dylan Moore has been solid. Carlton key-pronged forwards have been great. But it's Zorko, it's Flanders, and it's Heaney. And based on ownership, people have Heaney. Not as many have Zorko. So to me, I'm really quite comfortable trading into Zorko. You can wait a week if you need, based on that break even. He might come down in price a little bit. Even if he goes 140, he's not going to go up much, if at all. Well, break even 125 means he will go up. So to me, I'm still quite okay to get into Zorko. I think sometimes we've just got to swallow our pride. I know history says that's when the injury comes, but he's the forward taking ground from you every single week if you don't own him. If you can't afford him, you don't have to go there. But if you can afford him and it's not going to break your upgrade cadence over the next month, then I think you can go there. The other one that I think, and rightfully so based on what people are doing as a trade-in prospect this week, is getting into Zach Fisher. Under 500,000. He's been sensational for us since he's finally got the role that coaches were hoping he would have monopoly on over big chunks of the season. Well, he's got it over the past 3 weeks. A lower score of 113, a top score of 140, and a break even of 56 means he's still got money to make, and it's destined towards getting, well, in this role, at least over the next few weeks. I can't see why he doesn't push towards 550, 600,000. While the price might not matter yet at this point, if this Sheasel movement changes back, Colby McKercher comes back in a couple of weeks' time, he might not get as much monopoly of ball movement as he has, and then maybe we could look to move him on. But at this point in time, with a forward line that has some volatility outside of really the top couple, a defensive line that he could slip into, and a player like a Will Dawson or a Sexton that he enables great fluid movement for us, to me, to get a guy who clearly can go 110, averaging nowhere near that based on his price point and under 500K. I'm pretty happy to get into Zach. He's rightfully so one of the most traded in prospects of the week. And whether he's in your defensive or forward line over the next couple of weeks, he'll at least protect you a little bit more. In the midfield, here's an interesting one. Now, I don't know if this is the best move to make at $608,000, but Chad Warner has probably one of the best ceilings going around for us. He's got a break even in the 30s, so he's going up. Again, the price only matters when you start to trade out of them, but his past fortnight of 144 and 172 has been incredible. Here is a guy that is delivering on what we all thought he was going to be in 2023 based on how he ended 2022. He's now hit that spot, burst out of stoppage, impacting the scoreboard, both himself and through score involvements, winning the ball in contested moments, using it well, like literally being a SuperCoach love child with the scoring components that we all love and see at the moment, hits your unique box, hits the ceiling box. And while you're about to see some really cheap options that understandably so will feel more tempting to you, if again, much like we talked about with a couple of options in his teammate in Blakey, if ceiling and separation from the pack are two key drivers for the upgrades you're looking for, then Chad's got to be someone you look at, isn't it? At the end of the day, while we don't want to get lost in the pack, you do need to create some kind of separation from the pack. And he's gone 113 for the year, and I genuinely don't see a legitimately good argument for why he couldn't at least maintain that. Now, yes, you are paying for it. Absolutely. But gosh, going 150 plus in his past 2 weeks based on his average, I think it's like 138 in his last three. It's as good as anybody in SuperCoach based on what he's doing this year. He won't pick up forward status. He is a goal-kicking midfielder. He is spending some time off half forward, but it's nowhere near enough to be a consideration. So unique and ceiling, that's your MO, and you've got money to spend. Chad's your boy. Four last guys I'm happy to suggest in a similar price range is Lockie Neal at 614,000, a little bit higher based on his seasonal average, but he just keeps getting better this season. A 162 sits in his last three scores as well as a 110. He's just been a great SuperCoach scorer for many, many years. And while there might be some other mids that I'm about to introduce to you, and he is very, very much a tag risk most weeks, to me, he's just shown that on his day, he's the best SuperCoach scorer going around. He really, really is. And so to me, if you're like, no, I want to be in a little bit more with the pack. I want to feel a little bit safer in my ownership based on legacy and history and ownership over some other options. Okay, Lockie then really could scream out to you as a pick. But to me, if you're happy to spend over 600K as a midfield upgrade, Lockie's got as good a pedigree as any other midfielder that you could possibly be considering, so he would sit in the mix too. Three more to give you. You could stay with his teammate in Josh Dunkley. I think he's more likely a prospect you'll look at in the other format. We don't talk about that one on this podcast, though. But to me, again, he's going at 110 plus over the year. He probably doesn't have the same consistency of ceiling that players like Neil does. At times, his role, not in the midfield, but in terms of his mindset, is a little bit more sometimes focused on negating players. But to me, it's probably not a this week move with that break even of 133. If you're looking to go over 600K and uniqueness is your driver, you're probably looking more for Warner, or you want a bit more security, for sake of a better phrase, in Neil. But again, one of my favorite players to ever own in SuperCoach has been Josh Dunkley. You don't get the consistency of 150 plus scoring that he has done too often. So yeah, there's a couple of low scores in the last three and over the season, but to me, I just like owning Josh. Like, if your season is done and you just like owning players that are fun to own, that score in a bunch of different columns. He tackles well. He wins contested ball. He intercepts when required. He can go forward and kick a goal. He can score 30 points in a 90-second window over 7 or 8 different movements and acts. He's a SuperCoach beast on his day. He's probably not my number one prospect, but he's there. And he's someone that I think you've at least got to look and consider before you're there. But there's probably two I think people are going to look at most and foremost. Under 500,000 is Tom Green. Like, this is a guy that for the first few weeks of the year was the top scoring mid alongside Sarong.
Deciding which credit card or loan is right for you is like trying to choose where you want to eat for dinner. Except when you finally get to the restaurant, the menu's riddled with jargon that no average foodie could understand. So at Credit Karma, we keep things simple. We show you personalized recommendations that align with your money goals and help you turn the confusing fine print into terms you can actually understand. And as a cherry on top, we provide a detailed overview for a new card or loan before you apply. That way, we can help you make decisions faster and with more confidence. Download Intuit Credit Karma today to get started.
Destined to be pushing 120. But the guy on his day is a 150, he's a 140, he's a 130. He ticks every column of scoring that Champion Data and SuperCoaches are looking for. And if someone told you that a guy that was only at this price because of an injury, where he was single digits about 4 or 5 weeks ago, you probably wouldn't have thought he was attainable to you. Well, now he is. Him, Oliver, in 2 to 3 weeks' time, Rosie. You've got 3 guys that have a history of scoring that can range from 105 to 120 on almost any given week. All 3 of them at a bargain price. And look, if you're rotating 2 of those 3 on field, like, that's a really nice option. So is he the must-have pick this week? Well, no, of course he's not a must-have pick, but at under 500,000, if you're looking for a guy that can go 110 from now to the end of the year, if you're looking for a guy that, depending on the matchup, can be a 150 VC option early in the week, and has had his buy and is dirt cheap, you've got an absolute ripper here. So to me, sometimes you don't need to overthink it. He's awesome value. He's not a must pick, absolutely not, but he is awesome value. And again, if you're looking for a guy with ceiling on him and you're looking for a guy that can score really, really well, I'm okay to get my hands on Tom Green. This one might be a little bit more controversial, but I'm happy to throw him in there. It's Luke Davies-Uniacke. I've been on LDU all season. I have not been lucky enough to get off him, and maybe that sums up my SuperCoach season. But I definitely see a couple of things I like about LDU. His last month, he's really turned the corner in terms of his scoring. The fact is, over the last 3, he hasn't dropped under 109. He's got a 150 ceiling in there. He's certainly carrying the team a little bit more. For 2 years in a row now, we've seen him come home like a steam train in SuperCoach and go 120. And then I think the other thing is fixtures do start to come into it a little bit. They're technically always there for us in SuperCoach. It's how we can potentially max out our scoring potential on a player, but you could build a really compelling and argumentative case that North Melbourne, for inside midfielders, have one of the best fixtures going from now to the end of the year. Certainly the final month of the year is awesome, but from now to the end of the year, and with a West Coast matchup this week, yes, a Sheed tag could go to him, but Sheed won't be able to keep up with him at full pace when he's breaking away from clearance, when he's trying to separate from the pack. So you could be rewarded with a 120, 130 straight out of the gate. Now, is it worth going him over a Green, given they're at a similar average for the season? Well, that's where it starts to become a little bit more of interest. But to me, LDU, I've got him running at 120 from now to the end of the year. I think he's shown what he can be. He's found his feet a little bit more. This midfield mix is starting to settle. And I think Sheasel coming into the midfield has actually helped him. I don't think that's just a correlation. I do think that's a causation. Sheasel's ball use just means he's not the only one anymore. He doesn't feel the need to be Hercules and take this team on his shoulders. Wardlaw's defensive pressure and extra assistance at the contest means LDU's able to not be the only one going in and crashing into winning the ball. He's also able to become a second touch player and get the slightly more uncontested, although it still would qualify as one, but not have to win the ball on the ground, farm out the handball. He's able to burst and run and gun a little bit more. So for me, I've got him going 120 from now to the end of the year. He's not a for everyone pick, whether you don't like it, you don't trust it, you like options cheaper, you like options a little bit more expensive, totally fine. But to me, don't be surprised if he doesn't go 120 from now to the end of the season. I think he's a really good pick. Last thing before we wrap up this solo SuperCoach strategy pod, and to put it lightly, it's not strategy, it's more simplified reflections and advice more than strategy. But maybe we could stay in some strategy spaces before we wrap up this podcast. One of the questions we get asked a lot here at the coaches panel, and I don't understand why we get it too, is sort of from the middle third of the season, let alone to now we're in the back half technically. Coaches that have had a number of variables go against them. Some is luck, some is bad coaching decisions, some is bad selections, some is a combination of all. Is what do you do now that your season's over and you're focused on ranks? It's different in leagues to a degree because I think potentially you're still salvageable depending on your finals are. But, you know, what's top advice for coaches if their SuperCoach season is done? Simply this. Do things that when the pressure was on you to get a good rank, either in previous years or this year, with that off you, what's something that you normally wouldn't do that you could investigate and trial? I remember of multiple SuperCoach seasons. I've had years where I've finished really, really well and been really, really happy and proud of the number that I've been allocated as my rank. And then other seasons over the past decade plus that I've played it, that when people ask, you're just like, I'm finished at. So in those seasons where it's, I finished ranked, here's what I'd tell you if you feel like that's what you're destined to. Try, experiment, learn. Put VCs and Cs on players and matchups that you might not normally do. It's not being silly, but trialing different things. Look to bring in different guys that you might not. Bring in players that you enjoy owning. Do something tactically where you might normally only use one trade on a movement, use two. Try different things to see if you could take some learnings out of the season. Don't just let, if 2024 has gone an absolute basket case for you, for whatever reason, you can dialogue and kind of dissect that in the back moments of the season when the heat is out. But now, if the year is done, what can you do that just makes these last couple of months fun? What can you do that brings a level of excitement? And so while others are clamoring for rankings, you're fighting for learnings and you're fighting for fun and enjoyment. Because at the end of the day, winning the 50K is great. Getting a great prize from the guys at SuperCoach is great, but what can you do? Can you choose to really, really narrow your focus on just, I'm going to load up on trying to win a week and going to absolutely go for the first round score? Whatever it is, try a couple of different things that normally you wouldn't do. Because the moment SuperCoach doesn't get fun is the moment you get frustrated with it. And when you get frustrated, you don't want to get involved in it. And playing SuperCoach is one of my favorite things in life, not just for the community around it that it creates, but just the joy that it can bring in life. Life can sometimes have so many challenges. This thing's meant to bring enjoyment and a greater and deeper connection to football. And so if your rank is done, what can you do this weekend? What can you do as you're listening to this podcast? Is there a player that you'd never normally consider trading out, but you're going to split their value and get 2 moves? And what can you do? Look at it, think of it, trial it, so that you take those learnings into future seasons. And that can help you. Potentially, you might unlock an ideology that you've never really thought of. It might give you confidence to try something that other coaches seemingly do more natively or with less fear of consequence. You might find yourself finding some freedom and learnings to do it. So, yeah, if your season's over, that's okay. I don't know one super coacher that's been playing for more than 3 to 5 years that hasn't had 1 year where they've gone, my ranking is... We've all had them. It's totally okay. Take the learnings, but don't waste the back half of the year so that you can take every learning you have and reapply it for future seasons. Hey, I want to thank you so much, whether you're watching this on YouTube, and if you are, comment below and let me know what your trades are this week. I'd love to know. We'll comment back and let you know how you're going with those moves. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that. It's one of the small, simple thank yous that you can do that help the coaches panel out. If you're listening to this as an audio podcast, thank you so much for getting through 45 minutes of me on my own. Well done to you for being able to do that. I hope you've enjoyed the solo pod. I thought you'd rather a solo strategy or a solo SuperCoach pod than no SuperCoach pods. We wanted to get that to you. But if you haven't subscribed to the channels, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, wherever you're getting this audio podcast, gosh, Audible, anywhere. Thank you for listening to it. Subscribe. If it gives you the option to do a 5-star rating or write a review, could you please do that? It's one of those simple things that make a huge difference to us here at the Coaches Panel. And then lastly, if you've not become a part of our Patreon supporter group, are you missing out? Yes, you're missing out. You're missing out in a bunch of different great things. One, it's an incredible community that are always looking to give back and to support one another. So feeling like you're not alone on your SuperCoach journey is one thing. You get a ton of additional rewards and content that come your way, from weekly podcasts to a bunch of other things, Q&A, responsibilities and answers, access to the panel, and a ton of other stuff. And it's just a nice way to say thank you for the content you might have enjoyed over the season and pre-season of 2024. All the details for our Patreon, where you can find us on social media, and anything else that we've mentioned in this podcast of links, you can find in the description of this episode. Hey, good luck heading into round 13. Best 18. Use those blue dots if you need for your captaincy scores. Make some bold, aggressive moves, and I hope the moves you do make pay off absolutely incredibly for you. But from me, on behalf of the rest of the coaches panel, good luck this week. Set yourself up for success for the coming weeks and months ahead, and we will be back with you very, very soon talking all things SuperCoach.